Hey, if you're a contractor with your sights set on a project in Montana, you've come to the right place. We're about to break down exactly what's required, and maybe more importantly, what isn't, to work in Big Sky country.
So, you're gearing up to work as a contractor in Montana? That's great. But before you break ground, there are a couple of really key rules you have to understand, whether you're a local or coming in from out of state.
And here's the thing, when it comes to contractor licensing, Montana does things a little differently. It's probably not what you're expecting. In fact, the most important rule for most contractors is actually about what you don't need.
And that is, there is no statewide general contractor bond required. You heard that right. Unlike a lot of its neighbors, Montana does not make you get a surety bond at the state level. Honestly, if you remember one thing, make it this.
So, you're probably asking, why? How does that work? Well, it all comes down to the way the state handles its contractors. And this brings us to a really key idea. In Montana, it's all about registration, not licensing.
Okay, so here's the deal. Montana doesn't license most contractors in the traditional sense. Instead, they register you. You just have to register with the Department of Labor and Industry, or the DLI. The great news? This process doesn't involve a surety bond or some big exam. It's a much more straightforward system, really just designed to keep track of who's working in the state.
So what do you actually have to do? It's really just a simple two-step process. First, get registered with the Montana DLI. But, and this is super important, step 2 is you have to verify the local requirements. I'm talking about the specific city or municipality where you're going to be working. We'll get into why that's so crucial in just a second.
All right, so we've established there's no state bond for general contractors, but there is one big exception, and you absolutely need to be aware of this one.
And that one big exception is the water well contractor bond. So if you're a licensed water well driller, you do need a bond. And notice something else here. It's handled by a completely different agency. This one's administered by the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, the DNRC. It's a totally separate system from that general DLI registration we just talked about.
Okay, let's say you've registered with the state, and you're not drilling water wells. So you're good to go, right? Well, not so fast. This is where we got to zoom in and look at the local level, because that's where the city and municipal rules come into play.
And this right here is the question that can really trip a contractor up. Hey, if the state doesn't require a bond, am I in the clear? It seems like a logical question, but making that assumption can get you into some real trouble.
And the simple answer is not always. Individual cities, they can have, and they often do have, their own specific bonding requirements. So just because the state says you're good, that doesn't mean the city of Bozeman or Billings won't. That's why that second step, checking locally, is an absolute must. You just can't skip it. Just to give you a real-world idea of what this might cost, let's look at some typical numbers. As you can see, we're not talking about a lot of money here. A local municipal bond for, say, $5,000 might only cost you around $50 a year if you've got good credit. The main point is that even if you do need a local bond, the cost of staying compliant is usually a tiny fraction of your overall project budget. Okay, so to really get a handle on Montana's pretty unique system, it helps to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. How does it compare to its neighbors there in the Mountain West?
From a bird's eye view, you can kind of group Montana and Colorado together. They're both pretty lightly regulated at the state level, and they both leave bonding up to the individual cities. And that is a huge contrast to states like Idaho and Utah, where having state-level licenses and bonds is just the standard way of doing things.
And when you look at the details, you can really see that difference pop. Look at Montana right at the top. No state license, no state bond. It's really one of the most hands-off states in the whole region for contractors. Now compare that to, say, Idaho, which requires both for certain trades, or even Utah, where bonding can be conditional. This context really shows you why checking those local rules in Montana is so incredibly important. All right, we have covered a lot of ground. So let's wrap this up with a quick review. Think of it as your Montana compliance checklist, just to make sure everything is crystal clear. Okay, let's do a little rapid-fire recap. First question, the big one. Does Montana require a statewide contractor bond?
And the answer is a big, clear no. Remember, Montana uses a registration system with the DLI, not a licensing system, and that registration doesn't require a bond for general contractors.
Okay, next up, are there any state-mandated bonds at all? Yes, but just that one we talked about. A bond is required for water well contractors. And don't forget, that's handled by a whole different department, the DNRC. And finally, the last question to make sure you are totally good to go. What is that final, crucial step you have to take?
It's simple. Always check with the local building department in the city or town where you plan to work. Seriously, in Montana, the local rules are what really matter. Taking that one step will save you from some major headaches down the road.
So, let's say you've done your homework, you checked with the city, and it turns out you do need a municipal bond. Or maybe you're one of our water well contractors. Well, the next step couldn't be easier. You can get your surety bond quote in just minutes over at buysuretybonds.com.